Welcome to the Fight with Depression. My name is Christopher Boussard, firefighter and author of The Fight, My Battle with Depression.
Welcome, and thank you for joining me on The Fight with Depression, the podcast where I speak honestly about the reality of mental illness. In this episode, I want to address some of the concerns and dangers with dealing in absolutes and with lumping everyone into the same category. But instead of taking this as a one-size-fits-all, we can find what works for us. And this is something that has kind of bothered me for a while. And honestly, this topic is the big push for me to start this podcast in the first place. I'd like to talk to you about the good intentions behind this, but there are dangers that can come of it. But in this episode, I want to look at studies on diet and physical activity. Reminder, if you have signs of a mental illness, please seek care from a mental health professional prior to attempting any treatment on your own. So I've seen and read many things, different videos, books, articles, so on, from people claiming to have the cure to depression or anxiety. This is generally a diet plan or an exercise program or a meditation regime. And there are many reasons that a person is getting this information out there. And you might be wondering, isn't this what you're doing? I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. I don't have a cure, and neither do they. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that, but that's reality. So these are not cures. Just like people take medication for hypertension or diabetes, doesn't mean that they are cured. So in my many years of working in the fire service and on a private ambulance in an urgent care, I've had a lot of people, when we ask them for their medical history, we ask if they have high blood pressure or diabetes, anything like that. And they always say, well, no, I don't have any of those. So you ask their list of medications, and then they give you hypertension medications, and you say, well, I thought you didn't have hypertension. And they tell us, well, I don't anymore because I take medication for it. Well, they still have hypertension. Just because they're on medication doesn't mean that they don't still have the illness. The treatments are only to reduce their symptoms. Another reason that people might say that they have a cure for depression or anxiety or any of these is that they probably have good intentions. They're trying to share their success, something that has worked for them. And the mentality is, well, this worked for me, so it should work for you. Or the people getting this out there may just be uneducated on what all is involved in mental illness. Or this person could be trying to sell you something. There are many reasons people experience depression or anxiety symptoms, and I kind of lump them into different categories. Could be situational, could be psychological, post-traumatic stress injuries, and so on. Could be physical, their diet or activity levels, or physiological, chemical imbalances, and so on. They may be recent or lifelong symptoms. And personally, I've dealt with this all my life, so I don't know what it's like to have it suddenly impact you without any history. If a program is designed to impact one area, it most likely won't be useful in another. These programs that they're talking about only address symptoms, and they're not a cure. So first, I want to kind of take a look at exercise. And according to Anxiety and Depression Association of America, major depressive disorder affects over 16.1 million American adults. And in the article, The Role of Exercise in Preventing and Treating Depression by the American College of Sports Medicine, states that some studies show that exercise in depression has a response rate of about 50%. So this really means that about 8 million Americans don't respond to exercise. It could be that the other 50% that are not included already exercise significantly. Who knows? There could be many different reasons. And maybe when they are taking the survey, they're having a bad day when they answered the questions, or they were expecting more results. And these questions are very subjective. I just want to say that I believe 100% that we should exercise in order to reduce our symptoms of depression and anxiety. I'm not trying to dispute any of these claims that exercise improves mental health, because I absolutely believe that it does. It has worked for me in the past. I have seen improvement, but I have also been mid-exercise and have an anxiety attack. I've been in the middle of a bike ride and depression has hit me like lightning. And it could be that additional exercise for me just doesn't improve my symptoms. And again, this is not a cure. It's only meant to help your symptoms. Such as taking hypertension medication does not cure you from having hypertension. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to take the medication anymore. It's simply being controlled by the medications. In the same way, exercise does not cure depression. It only helps manage your symptoms. So now let's take a look at diet. So Eva Selhub, I hope I am pronouncing her name right. Eva, I'm sorry if I did not. Eva Selhub, MD, writes in her Harvard Health blog article, Nutritional Psychiatry, Your Brain on Food. Studies have compared traditional diets, like the Mediterranean diet and the traditional Japanese diet, to a typical Western diet, and have shown that the risk of depression is 25% to 35% lower in those who eat a traditional diet. And Monique, this is going to be another one that I'm going to mess up. Sorry, Monique. Monique Tello Teo, MD, writes in her Harvard Health blog article, Diet and Depression, that treatment options for depression include medication, therapy, and self-care. Self-care, of course, including sleep, physical activity, and diet. But regarding diets, she asks, what came first, the diet or depression? A poor diet may be the result, not the cause of depression. You may not eat well because you're depressed, or you could develop symptoms because of a diet, or it could be a snowball. You're not eating well because you're depressed, and you're depressed because you're not eating well. Monique goes on to explain that researchers found that a healthy diet, such as the Mediterranean diet as an example, was associated with significantly lower risk of developing depression symptoms. And this implies that the people do not have depressive symptoms prior. If a person begins to have symptoms of depression because of their diet, then a change in their diet will change their symptoms. In the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health article, evidence of the importance of dietary habits regarding depressive symptoms and depression says that there is a risk of developing depression when excluding specific food from the diet. This article says that the prevalence of depressive symptoms was the highest for vegans at 28.4% and lowest among omnivores at 16.2%. Believe me, this is not a discussion to try and convince anyone that eating meat is good or bad. In regards to eating meat, Paul writes in Romans 14, verse 6, whoever eats meat does so for the Lord, for they give thanks to God, and whoever abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. He continues about this in verse 22, so whatever you believe about these things, keep between yourself and God. So I am not sitting here telling anybody you should or should not eat meat. So however a person chooses to eat, whether vegetarian, vegan, omnivore, this is up to them. But I just want to say that if you do remove any food from your diet, make sure you're replacing the vital nutrients that are being removed. But does this mean that nutrition is only helpful to people who are deficient? This article continues that the adherence to the Mediterranean diet led to significantly improved mental health in adults with depression. This shows that if you do suffer from depression, a proper diet can help. As I was continuing to work toward my degree, I did a research project for a class on the benefits and harm of different diet plans. And I found out that the Mediterranean diet was the most beneficial. And the reason is that it does not eliminate any food groups or nutrients from your diet. I described it as not necessarily being a diet in the way that we think of a typical diet, but it focuses on specific foods that are beneficial. And the reason this diet works is because it's lower in foods that cause higher levels of inflammation and higher in foods with anti-inflammatory properties. This article says that foods with higher levels of inflammation in the body linked to increased risk of depression. Foods with anti-inflammatory effects can reduce depression. But the thing with these studies is that they're based on strict adherence to the diet. If you only incorporate these occasionally, you still have higher inflammation in your body, which increase symptoms of depression. This only reduces symptoms if an increase in depression symptoms is most likely related to an increased inflammation in the body. Thus, decreasing inflammation decreases symptoms of depression. If you have depression already, this is not a cure. It's only a reset to your normal. And people often don't follow these programs regularly because of time, they're busy, or just they feel discouraged, or their symptoms do improve and they feel that they don't need to keep following this as strictly anymore. And I've been guilty of all of this. So your body has a level of homeostasis, which is essentially how your body reacts when everything is balanced. This is different from one person to the next. This is because our bodies are physiologically different from one another. If two people do everything exactly the same, such as eat, sleep, and exercise, there are still differences in their bodies. If I have chronic depression because of a physiological imbalance, then eating the same or exercising the same as another person without this issue won't have the same effects. The same with blood pressure or high cholesterol. I have low blood pressure and low cholesterol. If I do everything the same as a person with hypertension or who has high cholesterol, their blood pressure or cholesterol levels will still be higher than mine. And just because one person has better luck or sees better improvement than you do, this does not mean that you failed or that something is wrong with you. This just means that you're not identical. I exercise frequently. I'm always moving, I'm outside a lot, and I eat relatively well. And I consistently see articles saying 15 minutes of exercise or an hour outside or eliminating sugary drinks will cure your depression. But for me, these don't apply. So even though I still do them, I have symptoms. Does that mean I'm helpless? No. But that's the conclusion a person comes to when they don't see the changes that are promised. They think they have failed, or that there's something wrong with them, or that they're hopeless. So don't follow the promises for a cure in depression. Know that many things are beneficial, but a lot of them take effort and dedication and require you to stick to your diet or exercise. Remember that these are not cures. They are only meant to help treat your symptoms. If you don't get the results you want, you haven't failed. It just means that there's something else going on. And I have said this before, and I can't say it enough. You need to consult with a mental health professional to figure out what is right for you. But don't forget, there is always hope. And until next time, God bless.
Thank you for joining me at The Fight with Depression. If you'd like to hear more, please follow this podcast or join me at thefightwithdepression.com. Remember, you are not in this fight alone, and let's continue to fight this good fight together.